Why, hello there, and good day. My name is Cademan David. I've made all the animations that you'll see on this YouTube channel, and this is my review of Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that name right. So, this movie is kind of confusing for me. It's not a bad movie by any means. In fact, I was quite surprised on how my propaganda radars never went off during this movie. Now, with that being said, I think this movie was a good movie that was rushed into production. And I don't know that for sure. I haven't heard anything about it being rushed into production or anything like that. However, when I watched it, that's very much how it felt. Now, I guess I'll start out with the positives. One, it was cool to go to a movie theater and see a Lord of the Rings anime on the big screen, something that I'm a fan of the idea of, and it's kind of cool to see this weird thing. It was really cool to go to the movie theater and see an anime type movie on the big screen, because I am a fan of the anime style. So to see it actually in a movie theater was quite cool, I thought. And all of the character designs I thought were pretty cool. The weapon designs, all that I really liked. Now, with that being said, the animation wasn't quite as good as I wanted it to be. And I think this is an area where a lot of it comes back to that I think they were probably rushed to get the movie out. So, in a lot of places, the frame rate isn't the best. I must admit, I do feel a little bit weird criticizing this, being someone who makes only subpar animations and oftentimes does cut corners because I'm running low on time and I have deadlines for myself. But I think it is kind of different when you're a big major studio whose job it is to make animations than just being some guy on YouTube who's doing it completely by himself, completely self taught. So I just wanted to throw that in there just because it's an interesting thought. And it's kind of hard to watch at times. The opening shot, they use a CGI ground, which a CGI ground will never look good unless it's in a fully CGI world. A CGI ground just won't look good. Now, the other problem I had was with a lot of the characters. I felt as though they just weren't done as well as they should have been. I can't say I really know the character of any of the characters from this movie. So now, with all that being said, we're going to move into spoiler territory. So, one scene in this movie I really loved was there was an elephant and it fought a giant octopus. Very cool. I loved that scene. She's being chased by an elephant, she runs into a forest, and she gets a giant octopus to come and eat the elephant alive. That was fun. The bad guy in this film, Wolf, I thought I really liked at first. However, by the end, they tried really hard to make him unlikable. And I think it would have been more interesting if he would have just stayed sort of charismatic and honorable throughout the entire film. That would have been a more interesting story to me where you have this likable villain who is, even though he's likable, he's doing the wrong thing. I have a lot of issues with his character in particular because I feel like somewhere in the movie there is a sudden switch where he goes from wanting to marry the main girl, I forget her name, to absolutely hating her. And the relationship between those two characters was not well defined at all. I didn't know what their relationship was. At first, they seemed to be friends, but then by the end, he clearly wants to kill her. I don't really know why. And at the end of the movie, this character Wolf is like he's lying to the people who are working for him. He's willing to kill the people who are working for him. He even says himself that he's honorless, he has no honor. And to me, it just didn't make sense. This was who this character was, then how was he friends with the girl? That doesn't really add up with how she's presented. So I guess we're left to assume that somewhere along the lines, the character of Wolf changed. However, we don't see that. So am just, at the end of the day, disappointed because I really wanted to like the character. He has a cool design, and at the beginning of the movie, he does seem to be acting quite honorable. He seemed like a guy I would get along with. Now, you might say he was never meant to be acting honorable in the beginning, and I wasn't supposed to like him. But here's the thing, even if you have a completely evil character, there should be something I like about that character. Otherwise, I don't think it's a good character. Even if that thing I like about the character is that I don't like the character. There is some characters who are so evil, I just love to not like the character. But this character wasn't that way for me. Now, if other people did like this character, and they were like, no, I exactly understand who he is, then that's cool for you. That works for you. But for me, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to like this character because I like this character, or like this character because I hate this character. So I ended up having no feelings for the character, and that's kind of why I say I wanted to like the character. But then, and I know I said my propaganda radars were never set off for this movie, but the one area where they were just a little bit is it kind of felt like maybe they were dragging his character through the mud so that the lead girl character had a toxic man that she could put in his place. And that's just disappointing to me because they could have told a much better story keeping that character more consistent or showing him change slowly from the honorable character we see in the beginning to the honorless character we see at the end of the movie. Now, the other big complaint I have is this movie kind of feels like it doesn't have a lot of direction. It kind of seems like it kind of seems like just a series of events happening without using it to tell like a full coherent story, which is probably because this movie was based off of like just bits and pieces that Tolkien had written about the history of Middle Earth. However, when you're sitting there watching it in the movie theater, it kind of reads like, oh, they're just trying to pad out the runtime. And it's disappointing to me because they could have spent more time on the characters and stuff like that if they weren't so focused on making this thing happen and then this thing happen and then this thing happen. So it's really quite a shame that to me it seemed like the movie was just made up of beats, of moving from one beat to another without saying anything about the characters that are going from one beat to another. And an example of this is when the king kind of died. He was shot with a bunch of arrows, and then his wounds were healed, but he was, I guess, just acting like he was dead because both of his sons were dead, or else he was actually like unconscious for a while. And then all of a sudden, he disappears, and people think that like he's a wraith, and he's going out and he's killing the enemies that are outside of the fortress where they're hiding. And it's sort of a cool story beat where it's like, I would love if that was the story where it's like this king who's like so deep in despair that he doesn't want to talk to his people or work with anyone, but he's like sort of going out on something of a revenge quest by himself. And then how I would have told the story is that his daughter actively tries to go out and find him and bring him back. But they didn't do that. Instead, it was just like, oh, he gets shot a bunch, so maybe he's gonna die. But nope, he's not gonna die because he's healed. But oh, he's gonna die anyway from heartbreak. Oh, but no, he didn't die because now he's actually sneaking out of through these secret passages, which I don't really know how he knew where the secret passages were. But that's what he did. He snuck out through these secret passages to kill these guys, and then nope, actually, that entire story was pointless because right after that he freezes to death. And I was like, does what do these story beats say about these characters or anything like that? And it's not that they don't say stuff about the characters, it's just that the movie didn't represent it as saying anything about the characters. And again, I think it's so sad because there's so much potential for a really good movie within this movie. I think that's all I have to say about this movie. Overall, I actually did like the movie. It was so cool to see Lord of the Rings in anime form and to see it on the big screen. Even with the trouble I had with the animation, which, by the way, at points was actually kind of headache inducing. Like, that was kind of how bad the animation was. Or, I don't want to say bad, it wasn't always great, and a lot of times they sort of used CGI backgrounds, and when they did that, it didn't look good at all, especially when the ground was CGI. So they used like sort of a weird blur effect, I think, to help blend the characters into the background. Either that or it was just something in the theater where I watched it that was making it blur weirdly. But that was very headache inducing for me. When the movie started with like the CGI ground, I was like, oh no, is this, please don't let this be the entire movie. And luckily it wasn't, but that opening shot looked really bad. and it was hard for me to watch. And again, I think all of this was just to get it out on time. But anyway, with that being said, that's my standalone thoughts is I think this was a really good movie that they didn't have the time to give the movie its full potential. And that is a shame. That's just like a day after having seen it. So maybe when it comes out, not in theaters, I'll watch it again and I'll have different opinions. My opinion may very well change, is all I'm saying. But at the end of the day, let me know. What did you think of this movie? Did you like it? Did you hate it? And why? Also, I would be interested to hear if anyone else had the weird blurring effect or if it was just my movie theater. Um, if it's not and it is the movie, like that's the worst thing in the movie. Yeah. And while you're down there telling me what you thought of this movie, by all means, click on the like and subscribe button to toss them into Mount Doom, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, dear viewer, and have a blessed day.